In the movie The Joker, there's a small detail that many people overlook. Before the main character bursts into manic laughter, he often sits alone, writing in an old, worn-out journal. And in it, there's a faint, scribbled, haunting line. "I just wish someone would notice that I exist. No one is born wanting to destroy. No one willingly chooses the negative path." But when someone has to live too long with thoughts that are unseen, misunderstood, unnamed, those thoughts begin to surface in the most distorted ways. They don't destroy through violence, no, at first, but through silence, through the familiar whispers in your mind. "I'm not good enough. I never do anything right. Something is wrong with me." Have you ever felt that? The feeling of being eaten away by your own thoughts bit by bit, from your sense of worth to your energy to your very presence in this world. If you have, then this video is for you. Not to force yourself into positive thinking, not to escape your emotions or repaint everything with shiny slogans, but to do one thing together. Descend into the deepest layer of your mind where negative thinking was born, took root, and has silently steered you for years, to clearly see what is true and what is just a story you've been telling yourself, and then begin a healing journey, not with hype or instant motivation, but with intentional, grounded, deeply human steps. I'm Stoic App. Thank you for being here today. If you can, stay with me until the end of this video. Not because this video is special, but because maybe this is the first time you've truly chosen not to abandon yourself. 1. Decoding the deep roots of negative thinking. Have you ever noticed a compliment comes and goes, but a single insult, just one sentence, can cling to you for years? One failed exam, one harsh comment from a teacher, one look of disappointment from a parent, one cutting remark in the middle of an argument. They may seem long gone, but they're still there, like invisible seeds buried in the subconscious. And every time you fail, every time you get rejected, every time things don't go your way, those seeds resurface. Their roots grow deeper into how you see yourself, your life, your future. That's when negative thinking stops being a passing emotion and becomes a hidden blueprint that shapes your entire inner world. Neuroscience calls this the negative bias. The human brain, designed for survival hundreds of thousands of years ago, is more sensitive to danger. In the primitive world, even a moment of carelessness could get you killed by a wild animal. So your brain was programmed to pay more attention to what's bad, to exaggerate risk, to hold on to pain, as an early warning system for survival. The problem is, we're no longer in the jungle, but the brain still runs the same software. The result is, you could have a productive day, receive 5 compliments, but one frown from your boss and your whole mood crashes. Or you could be out enjoying yourself, but just one cold text message, and suddenly you're spiraling into self-doubt, overthinking, and the feeling that you're not enough. That's not just momentary sadness. That's an old wound being reopened. And when those wounds never heal, they turn into a grey filter that clouds everything you see. Negative thinking doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's cultivated through unhealed hurt, through repeated criticism, through failures you never processed, through expectations so high you always feel less than, and eventually no one else has to say it anymore. You start saying it to yourself in your own mind every single day. Pause and ask yourself, are you really thinking negatively, or have you been living inside a pattern of negativity so familiar that you no longer even notice it? Because when a thought repeats itself too many times, it's no longer just a thought. It becomes a belief. And when that belief is distorted, twisted, and negative, it rewrites your entire reality. Like a chronic illness, if you only treat it with painkillers, you'll feel better for a while. But if you don't go to the root, it'll come back stronger, deeper, more dangerous. Stoicism calls this retraining our judgments. Before you can learn to control your thoughts, you must learn to recognize what's been controlling you. It's not the world. It's not other people. It's the story you've been telling yourself over and over again from old memories you've never brought to light. And when you finally see that, only then do you have a real chance to begin again. Not by forcing yourself to think positively, but by facing the root with clarity, honesty, and courage. 2. Rethinking your mindset. Not just positive thinking, but inner discipline. Have you ever told yourself, "I just need to think more positively," only to find yourself, just a few hours later, falling back into the same old spiral, worrying, feeling low, restless, blaming yourself? Have you ever read a self-help book, plastered your room with affirmations like, "Everything will be okay. I am worthy of love. Stay optimistic," but still felt empty inside? Some people don't need anyone else to hurt them because they are already the harshest judge of themselves. And when negative thinking has embedded itself into your internal patterns, then positive thinking is nothing more than slapping a bandage over a house-wide crack in the walls. We live in a time that worships positivity, but it's often a kind of blind positivity. So many people force themselves to stay upbeat, while on the inside they're lost, drained, or no longer trust their own feelings. They're not truly well. They've just gotten good at hiding their pain behind a cheerful mask. And that's when something else is needed, something more real, not fantasy, not painted over, not something that demands you to be happy, but something that begins with the truth even when it hurts. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be optimistic. It simply invites you to look directly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Stoicism doesn't tell you to discard your sadness. It asks you to examine it with reason. Is this really how I imagine it to be? Am I exaggerating, reacting instead of reflecting? Does feeling weak mean I am weak? And then, little by little, Stoicism doesn't help you run from emotion. It helps you train to walk through it. Just like physical strength requires practice, inner strength requires exercises too. Learning to separate real emotion from automatic reaction, learning to sit with discomfort without instantly responding, learning to act from your values, not from passing moods. The person chasing positivity wears rose-colored glasses. The person practicing Stoicism cleans the dust off the lens. Stoicism is the art of reshaping perception. It won't turn your life into a fairy tale, but it will help you stand steady in the gray. Because what you need is not a world without difficulty. What you need is a mind clear enough not to be dragged around by every wave in that world. And that's why Stoicism is especially powerful for young people, those feeling lost, wrestling with expectations, comparison, heartbreak, unfulfilled dreams, and unanswered questions. You don't need blind faith to cling to. You just need a method for training yourself from your very first thought. Because in the end, you don't change your life with a quote taped to the wall. You change it by retraining your mind day by day, not to escape reality, but to be strong enough to live fully within it. 3. Separating the story from the truth. Have you ever been in this situation? They don't text you back. That's the reality, just one message that never came. But you don't stop there. You begin writing a script in your head. They're ignoring me on purpose. Maybe they've lost interest. Did I do something wrong? And from those invisible lines of self-talk, emotions begin to swell. Hurt, anger, anxiety, insecurity. But all those emotions don't actually come from the other person's action. They come from the story you just created and believed. We don't react to reality. We react to our perception of reality. And that perception is often a blend of two things: the event and our interpretation. One part is what actually happened. The other part is the meaning, judgment, expectations, and beliefs we attach to it. The problem is, if we don't separate those two, we end up living our whole life emotionally hijacked by imagined stories. Stoicism invites us to practice something simple yet powerful. Interrupt the narrative. Stop mid-thought. Insert a pause between the event and the emotion. Ask yourself, is this really true? Do I have any evidence for what I'm thinking right now? Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself. Remove the judgment. See things for what they truly are. And Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You can't heal a wound you haven't clearly seen. You can't break a cycle if you don't even realize you're in one. Learning to distinguish between what is real and what is just the story you're telling yourself is the first step toward inner freedom. It's the beginning of decoding the mechanisms of negative thinking. So, every time strong emotions rise within you, instead of reacting, sit down, grab a pen, and write. Write with honesty. What is the event? Just the event, no emotion. Then write, what is my interpretation? Finally, ask yourself, is there any proof for what I'm thinking? Am I projecting? Is this something from my past that I'm overlaying onto the present? Those lines you write become a mirror for your mind. They help you see that some things no longer need to be believed. Some stories have stayed too long not because they're true, but because you've never questioned them. And once you can separate the story from the truth, you're no longer a character trapped inside the script. You become the one who rewrites it. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek and one of the most influential voices on productivity and mindset, once shared that he struggled with depression for years and was often pulled into dark, imagined stories of his own making. The turning point came when he encountered Stoic philosophy, especially through the habit of writing down the worst-case scenarios he was picturing in his head. He called this practice fear setting, an exercise where you write out your fear, separate fact from fiction, and ask yourself, if the worst happens, what would I do? It was the act of facing those mental scripts with clarity that freed him from being haunted by things that hadn't even happened. And from that point on, he stepped out of the negative spiral not through motivation, but through reason. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be strong right away, but it gives you a framework, a path, a map, to slowly rewrite your life from within. If you've ever written down a story in your head and realized it wasn't true, share it in the comments. Who knows, maybe the story you escaped will be the key for someone else who's still stuck. And if you want to continue this journey, the journey of mastering your mind with clarity and calm, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos from Stoic App. We're not here to live as people driven by stories in our heads. We're here to learn how to rewrite them, line by line, chapter by chapter, life by life. 4. Facing your emotions, accepting the experience instead of suppressing it. There's a kind of pain people hide well. The smile stays intact. The answer is still, I'm fine. But inside, a flood is waiting to break. We grow up in a world that praises composure, but often misunderstands it. People think calm means conceal, shut down emotions, just keep moving. But Stoicism never teaches us to suppress what we feel. On the contrary, it teaches us to face it with clarity and without judgment. Suppression isn't strength. Suppression is holding back a river until it builds pressure and bursts where you least expect it. It turns repressed emotions into invisible stress. We get irritated for no reason, tired without knowing why, trapped in anxiety, emptiness, or burnout. Stoicism doesn't say you shouldn't feel sad. It simply advises, don't let sadness dictate your behavior. There's a big difference between feeling something and letting that feeling control you. Emotions aren't enemies. They are the voice of your body and mind, signals that something important is happening. But if you don't sit down and listen, they'll end up screaming in more destructive ways. So what does a Stoic do when emotions rise? They observe without getting swept away. They name the emotion sadness, anger, envy, loneliness, and give it space to exist, like a cloud passing across the sky. They don't react immediately. They don't judge themselves for feeling weak. They don't rush to chase the sadness away. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "When emotions arise, ask, what is this? Where does it come from? And what is it trying to get me to do?" True calm doesn't come from hiding your tears. It comes from being able to sit with your own pain without letting it break you. I once met a man in his 40s, successful, strong, decisive, and he said, "The hardest thing I've ever learned wasn't how to act okay, but how to admit. I'm deeply hurt right now." And strangely enough, when he finally said it, it no longer felt so terrifying. Sometimes, courage isn't about moving forward. It's about pausing and admitting what's making you tremble. If you've ever gone speechless in the middle of a conversation because emotion rose too high, if you've ever tried to act strong while something inside you was melting down, if you've said, "I'm okay," so many times that you're no longer sure it's true, then maybe it's time to learn a new habit. Sit down, write down what you're feeling. You don't need to fix it. Just write. Just look. Like a friend sitting beside yourself. Try practicing observation without reaction. When anger arises, don't tense up to shove it down. Let it be there, but don't say anything. Don't do anything. Just breathe. Your breath is the thread that keeps you tethered to the present when your mind wants to run. Emotions, when properly seen, will pass. But when suppressed or overreacted to, they return louder and stronger. Stoicism teaches us a new kind of maturity, not the kind that never feels sadness, but the kind that knows how to feel without collapsing. Not escaping, not lashing out, not hiding behind a smile. Because calmness isn't the absence of feeling, it's the depth to hear your emotions and the strength to not be led by them. If you've ever felt ruled by your emotions, try one simple thing today. Don't hide it, but don't obey it either. Just sit down, take a breath, and say to yourself, "This is how I'm feeling, and that's okay." That's not weakness. That's the first step toward a mature inner strength. 5. Don't react too soon. The art of emotional pausing. Some decisions take just 1 second to make, but an entire year to carry the consequences. A rushed sentence said in anger, a message sent while hurt, a burst of emotion, and immediately we act. Fast, instinctive, without thinking it through, and then, a few hours later, when the emotions have cooled, we look back and whisper to ourselves, "If only I'd stayed calm for just a little longer." But everything words, actions, wounds can no longer be taken back. Stoicism calls this reaction without space, and that space, even just a few seconds, can save a relationship, a day on the brink of collapse, or even the image of the person we're striving to become. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "Don't react to the first impulse. Wait until reason returns to the captain's chair." Because emotions, no matter how intense, are just short waves, but the behavior we choose from them can leave marks that last far longer. Ryan Holiday, of the leading modern voices of Stoic philosophy, shared a principle he applies almost daily: breathe, label, pause. When under pressure, provoked, or criticized, instead of reacting instantly, he stops, takes a deep breath, names the emotion he's experiencing. I'm angry, I feel disrespected, and then steps back. And in that moment of pause, reason has time to step in. We stop acting like someone being dragged by emotion and start becoming someone who chooses to lead themselves. You don't have to be a philosopher. You just need to train one small skill: create a pause between emotion and action. One deep breath, one silent count, one step back to gain perspective. The more you practice, the faster it becomes a reflex. Like a warrior who doesn't draw his sword the moment he's provoked, but steps back, assesses the situation, and chooses a response that honors who he truly is. Practicing this isn't just about being more polite. It's about no longer being a puppet of your own impulses, about not being driven by every emotional wave that rises, and about realizing that one moment of silence can save a day going wrong. One conscious breath can prevent a hurtful word from being spoken. One mindful pause can preserve a relationship that was on the edge. Don't let anyone rush you into a confrontation. Don't let a buzzing phone make you think you have to reply immediately. Don't let emotion pressure you into doing something you'll regret an hour later. You don't always have to respond, and you don't always have to answer. Sometimes is the highest form of strength. People who live too fast often leave behind a trail of regret. But those who live slowly, who know how to pause before reacting, leave behind the quiet imprint of maturity. You can start practicing this today. The next time someone says something that irritates you, don't snap back. Just breathe. Name the feeling. Create a pause. And then, if you still want to say something, say it with clarity, not with pain. Respond as the person you want to be, as the reflex of who you used to be. 6. Mental discipline. Training willpower like a muscle. No one gets a strong body just by reading fitness books, and no one expects well-defined arms from working out a few times when motivation strikes and then quitting. We understand that the body needs consistent repetition to build strength. But when it comes to the mind, we expect something illogical. That we'll be clear-headed, wise, and strong just from a few moments of fleeting inspiration. But the mind, just like the body, needs training. And what builds inner strength isn't motivation, but discipline. Mental discipline isn't about forcing yourself to always be positive or trying to control everything. It's about repeating small actions over and over to keep your mind from slipping back into old patterns. Every time you interrupt a stream of negative thoughts mid-flow, it's like lifting a weight for your willpower. Every time you catch yourself overthinking but choose instead to observe, that's another rep for your inner muscle. Every time you challenge your emotions instead of letting them drag you around, you're sharpening your sword in silence. I once knew a friend who was incredibly talented, yet always told himself, "I don't deserve this." Every time he was about to achieve something, he would sabotage it, miss opportunities, decline invitations, back out before even starting. Until one day, he began journaling every morning, just one line. What old pattern showed up today? And day by day, he learned to recognize, set boundaries, and challenge those thoughts. Nothing dramatic. But after 6 months, people began to notice a different version of him. Calm, clear, less reactive, and more self-believing. Not because of a miracle, but because of discipline. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have the power to not have an opinion about something, and if you have no opinion, you cannot be disturbed." And Epictetus emphasized, "If you want control over anything, start with your own mind." Stoicism has never been a philosophy made for peaceful moments. It was born on the battlefield, and discipline is the strongest weapon of a warrior who lives in peacetime but refuses to let his mind grow lazy. Because if you don't train your mind how to think, the world will do it for you. You can begin this practice today. Every time a negative thought arises, instead of letting it pull you in, write it down, name it, identify. Is this just an old, familiar loop? Is there anything new here? And then, choose to set it down like putting a dumbbell back on its rack. Gently, without judgment, but without compromise. The mind doesn't grow strong through grand moments, but through thousands of quiet decisions repeated every day, not to become a slave to emotion or memory or outdated beliefs. It's a kind of strength no one sees right away, but it begins to reveal itself in how you move through life, with a center that doesn't shake so easily anymore. And if you've learned how to be disciplined with your own mind, then the next chapter will show you something just as important. How to build self-respect not from what others see, but from how you treat yourself when no one else is watching. If you find yourself slipping back into old patterns, don't rush to blame yourself. See it as a training session, another rep, another chance to be stronger than you were yesterday. And if this video is walking alongside you in that journey, share it with someone who's also learning how to stay grounded through the silent storms of life. Stoic App will return with more deep practice to help you build an inner strength that is steady, quiet, and unshakable. 7. Building self-respect. Once you've learned to observe your emotions, create space, and stop reacting impulsively, what keeps you grounded when no one's watching? What stops you from being pulled into fleeting temptations or urges to act against what you believe? The answer is self-respect. Many people get stuck in negative thinking, not because bad things keep happening to them, but because deep down they doubt their own worth. They don't believe they deserve peace, love, or respect. And when you don't believe you're worthy, you'll unconsciously choose things that hurt you as if that's what you deserve. Self-respect in Stoicism isn't about shouting, "I love myself." It's not about words. It's a way of living, a set of behavioral principles, and a value system you commit to quietly, day after day. Jocko Willinker, former US Navy SEAL commander, once said, "Discipline equals freedom, not motivation." He doesn't need applause for waking up at 4:30 a.m. He doesn't need validation for keeping his discipline every day. But he still does it because that's how he shows respect for himself. Action not declarationsis, the voice of self-respect. When you keep a promise to yourself, even something as small as waking up on time, when you behave according to your value 7, if no one claps for it, when you say no to what goes against your conscience, even in moments of loneliness, those are the moments you nourish self-respect. And when it becomes strong enough, you no longer need someone else's gaze to know you're worthy. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be content if what you're doing is right, whether or not anyone sees it, whether or not anyone praises it." Because that quiet integrity, repeated again and again, is what gives you the strength to stand tall even when the world turns away. They don't give away their self-worth for fleeting compliments. They don't fall apart every time they're rejected. They don't have to force themselves to prove anything, because they know, "I may not be perfect, but I'm living in alignment with what I believe is right." And the peace in that sentence, no one can take away. You can start with the smallest things, choosing a proper meal instead of letting yourself drift, making your bed after waking up, turning off the screen when you've promised yourself rest, saying no when someone demands something you know is wrong, refusing to trade your self-respect for temporary approval. Each of these small acts is a brick. Over time, you build a foundation not from compliments, but from the quiet, steady belief that I'm living like someone I can be proud of. And that is the quietest but most enduring weapon you can carry through every storm of negative thought. 8. Connecting with others. There's something that often happens when you fall into negative thinking. You withdraw. You stop talking. Stop texting. Stop showing up. Not because you hate people, but because you feel like you have nothing left to share. You think that if you speak up, others won't understand. That if you tell the truth, they'll see you as weak. So you choose silence. But that silence, when prolonged, turns into isolation. And isolation is the most fertile ground for negative thoughts to multiply. It makes everything in your head feel heavier than it is. It turns small wounds into overwhelming pain, and it slowly convinces you, no one really understands me. Stoicism doesn't teach you to become a stone emotionless, needing no one. Stoicism teaches you to be strong enough not to depend, yet peaceful enough to connect genuinely. True strength isn't about needing no one. It's about being steady enough to open up without fear of being hurt. Marcus Aurelius, though an all-powerful emperor, wrote hundreds of pages in his journal letters to himself as a way to reconnect with the human part within. He didn't write for anyone else to see. He wrote because he knew if he lost his connection to his heart, his reason, and other people, he would lose himself. And that's exactly what Brené Brown, leading researcher on vulnerability, once emphasized. When we avoid vulnerability, we don't protect ourselves from pain. We just lock ourselves into loneliness. Brené experienced mild depression after publishing her research. She said, "I wasn't hurt by the outside world. I was hurt because I didn't share enough with the people who truly loved me." So if you find yourself going quiet, be careful. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a cry for help stuck in your throat. You don't need to fix everything alone, but you do need enough steadiness to dare to speak. You can start gently. Write an honest letter to someone you trust, even just to admit, "Lately, I felt a little distant." Or simply invite a friend for a walk. Sit together, not to pour your heart out, but just to have someone near. One small conversation can be the thread that pulls you back from a deep place. One hug can make you feel less alone. Connection doesn't make you weak. On the contrary, it reminds you, you are not just what's stuck inside your mind. You're also a friend, a child, someone who can listen, feel, and open up. Remember, you don't need to be someone who's always happy. You just need to be someone who doesn't quietly disappear. And right now, after finishing this chapter, think of someone you used to feel deeply connected to, but haven't spoken with in a while. Send them a message, just one line. "I've been thinking about you." Don't wait until you feel totally okay to reach out. Sometimes it's reaching out that helps you feel okay again. 9. Maintaining positive habits. Have you ever had a day like this? A slow, quiet morning. You didn't scroll your phone right after waking up. You wrote a few lines in your journal, drank a glass of warm water, and sat still for a few minutes before starting your day. And even though your schedule was just as busy as usual, something inside you felt different. A sense of clarity, a rhythm that felt grounded, not swept away. In truth, we don't need massive changes to transform our inner world. We just need small habits, repeated daily with presence. In both psychology and Stoic philosophy, one thing is agreed upon. Every action, even a tiny one, is a message sent to the brain saying, "This is who I choose to be." And the more often you repeat an action, the more your brain reinforces that path. One journal entry, one deep breath before reacting, one choice to get up instead of staying stuck. Not grand gestures, just small bricks in the path you're building. Stoicism doesn't treat positive habits as tools to succeed, get rich, or maximize productivity the way modern self-help often does. It sees them as an inner responsibility to keep you clear-minded, steady, and aligned with your values, regardless of the chaos around you. Because without inner structure, it's so easy to be swept away by the noise outside. You don't need a major crisis, just one sleepless night, one disruptive message, one day without anything meaningful, and you can fall right back into old cycles. Negative thinking can't survive long in a well-structured environment, and habits are what build that structure. Like cleaning your room, not because it's already dirty, but because you know, if you don't clean it regularly, the mess will return. The same goes for the mind. If you don't clean it daily, with intentional actions, negativity will quietly creep back in. You don't need to start with anything complicated. Maybe 10 minutes of morning meditation, or a nightly question, where did my thoughts take me today? Or writing down one thing you're grateful for before going to bed. Simple acts, but when sustained, they become a strong foundation. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, once said, "You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, and habits are your system." James wasn't just speaking theoretically. He once battled a serious sports injury, lost his direction, and had to rebuild himself from zero. What pulled him out of the mess wasn't inspiration, it was making his bed each morning, writing a single sentence, doing one set of reps, one small action done consistently. And from there, his life was rebuilt, not through a sudden breakthrough, but through a quiet system of living. Years later, he became one of the most powerful voices in the world on growth and transformation, not because of one big moment, but because of thousands of steady steps. You can do the same. Choose one habit. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to do a lot. Just one small action repeated, and you give your mind something to anchor to. And once you have that anchor, you won't be so easily pulled away by negative thoughts. You'll stand steadier, feel lighter, and live more truthfully in a world that too often makes us forget who we are. 10. The still moment, where every mental battle ends. In the end, what you're really searching for isn't dazzling success, nor someone who finally understands you, nor even a philosophy to follow for life. What you truly long for is a quiet moment. A moment where the mind no longer chases anything, no longer fights anything, and no longer needs anyone to affirm anything. A stillness real and complete. In Stoicism, this state is called ataraxia, deep inner tranquility, undisturbed by any external chaos. It's not emptiness, but a fullness within. Not a mind that stopped thinking, but a mind that no longer lets thought lead, no longer lets emotion dominate, no longer lets past or future rule the present. Have you ever tried just sitting still? No music, no phone, no trying to meditate by any strict method. Just sitting, watching the breath come in and out, watching a thought arrive and letting it go, watching worry, tension, sadness drift by like clouds in the sky. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. The quiet will feel hollow. You may even feel like you're wasting time. But if you stay patient and don't walk away, something will slowly shift. You'll begin to feel a peace that doesn't come from the outside, but from the release of needing to become, needing to prove, needing to fight yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look for stillness not in the woods or by the sea but in your own mind." You don't need a place to escape to, because the moment you sit with yourself, without judging, without pushing away, without clinging, is the moment you begin to heal. Every battle in the mind doesn't need to be won. It just needs to be laid down. Stop arguing with your negative thoughts. Stop trying to control everything. Stop blaming yourself for not being stronger in the past. Just sit and breathe. You'll see the thoughts still come, but this time you don't have to react. Just let them pass, like someone watching a train move through a station without needing to board any of the cars. Because freedom doesn't begin when you gain control over everything out there. Freedom begins the moment you sit still and know you're no longer being dragged by what's happening in your own mind. And if you've made it to this chapter, ask yourself one thing. Today, can you sit still for 10 minutes, not to fix anything, but simply to listen to yourself as a friend? If you're still here after these 10 chapters, chances are you've lived through days like this, when nothing terrible has happened, yet inside you feel empty, tired, and strangely hard to name. As if your own mind has slowly become a maze where every exit leads back to the same dead end. Negative thinking isn't just a moment. It's the result of layered experiences, repressed emotions, and old thought patterns repeating unconsciously. And healing doesn't come from a single quote or a book. It begins the moment you dare to sit down, look inward, and start living differently in the smallest of ways. One conscious breath, one moment of writing down what you truly feel, one decision not to follow the same old reflex, one choice not to trade your self-respect for fleeting approval. These things, when repeated long enough, won't just calm your mind. They'll begin to reshape your entire life. We don't need to eliminate every negative thought. You just need to learn to let them pass without letting them control you. Because true freedom doesn't come from life getting easier, but from your ability to remain steady amid things that aren't. If this video made you pause and reflect, share it with someone who might need a quiet anchor right now. And if you want to keep walking this journey of mastering your inner world, living clearly, and showing up for yourself with quiet responsibility, let Stoic App walk with you with stillness, not noise.